like and subscribe, and send your country in comments to support us. Henri and Martine were a young African couple living in a small, dusty town. Henri worked as a civil servant while Martine was a university student, dreaming of becoming a doctor. They had one child, a little boy named Kofi, whose laughter echoed through their modest home. Although deeply in love, their financial situation was precarious. Henri struggled to make ends meet, while his colleagues seemed to swim in abundance, displaying outward signs of wealth. One day, one of Henri's colleagues, Sebastian, who was literally rolling in money, suggested that Henri join a secret sect that promised wealth and success. Henri had always been curious about Sebastian's secrets, but had never imagined that they could be linked to something so dark. With an enigmatic smile, Sebastian explained that this sect had supernatural powers and could transform his life. Desperate and tired of seeing his family suffer, Henri accepted the invitation. Sebastian led him through dark alleyways to a dilapidated old building. Inside, the air was heavy with mystery and anguish, the walls adorned with esoteric symbols and flickering candles. During the initiation ceremony, he was asked to make a terrible sacrifice, his own son, Kofi. Members of the sect, dressed in black robes and masks, chanted incantations while Henri, hands trembling, held the pestle. Torn but driven by the idea of a better life, Henri made the unimaginable decision to sacrifice his child. Kofi's cry echoed through the building, followed by a deathly silence. The cult members murmured dark blessings, and Henri felt a strange, cold force invade his body. Overnight, Henri and Martine's life changed radically. Henri began to receive money and promotions, and they were able to buy a large house and luxury cars. But with this new wealth, Henri felt increasingly isolated. Martine, though happy with their new prosperity, noticed Henri's strange behavior as he became more and more distant, his eyes haunted by an unmentionable secret. Henri began to have recurring nightmares of Kofi, covered in blood, asking him why he had betrayed him. The visions became more and more intense, and he heard whispers in the house, calling his name. He avoided Martine's gaze, fearing she would see the guilt in his eyes. One day, at a party given by his rich new friends, Henri, in a moment of drunkenness, began dancing on a table, imitating ridiculous movements and singing absurd songs. The guests, amused at first, began to feel uncomfortable when he started talking to a lamp, thinking it was his son Kofi. A few months later, Martine discovered the truth about Kofi's disappearance. While tidying up Henri's desk, she found a diary in which he had written in detail about the night of the sacrifice, his doubts and his regrets. Upset and disgusted by her husband's act, she decided to leave him, unable to forgive this atrocious sacrifice. She returned to her parents' home and continued her studies, finding the strength to rebuild herself despite the loss of her child. Henri, for his part, quickly remarried another woman, seeking to fill the void left by the loss of his family. However, the guilt and pain of his actions began to eat away at him from the inside. Kofi's visions became more frequent and violent. He would see his son in dark corners of the house, his eyes filled with tears and reproach. In moments of madness, Henri would talk to inanimate objects, believing them to be imaginary friends. He once tried to feed a garden statue, thinking it was Kofi. Neighbors often saw him wandering the street in a bathrobe, shouting apologies to imaginary pigeons he mistook for cult members. Eventually, madness overtook him. Henri lost all lucidity, wandering the streets, talking to himself, pursued by the specters of his past deeds. The townspeople, who had once envied him, now looked upon him with pity and horror. Henri ended his days in an asylum, screaming in terror every night, haunted by the ghosts of his sins. In his room, the walls were covered with grotesque drawings of Kofi, screaming and begging, and nonsensical words written with his own fingernails. Like and subscribe and send your country in comments to support us.